So UFC 281 just wrapped up, and then we're going to be talking about Lewis versus Spivak super early on into the week, man. It's Sunday night at the time that I'm recording this fight and fight card, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But first of all, I'm going to do a quick recap of UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. Going to make it super fast. Pereira beat Adesanya. I feel like maybe you could have let the fight go on for a little bit longer, but I think the results still would have been the same. I picked Pereira. I defended that pick all week long, and it felt so good, man. I know we was losing the fight until the end, but it still felt so good because I had to defend that pick so much. It's like when I picked Edwards to beat Usman, the amount of defense that I had to do behind that pick, and it just feels good, man. Zhang beat Esparza, Poirier beat Chandler in a war, Gutierrez knocked out Edgar, poor Frankie Edgar. I'm glad he's retiring. I think it's the right time. Maybe it could have been done earlier, but it happens. Dan Hooker beat Poles, and Dan Hooker really showed that there's levels to this, man. Like, Dan Hooker showed that he's definitely still like a top level fighter. I feel like there's a few guys in the top 15 that would give Dan Hooker a lot of trouble, but I think for now Dan Hooker's still kind of holding his own, beating unranked guys like Nasrat and Claudio. So hopefully that wasn't too long. Only 1 minute recap. Let's just get straight into it. Lewis versus Spivak taking place in the Apex. You guys know how I feel about the UFC Apex. I really don't like it. I don't like watching fights without a crowd because I feel like the crowd makes these fights so much more entertaining, so much more exciting. But it is what it is. Very quick predictions as well. Just an early preview as I usually do. I do this every week. And 48 hours after I've done my research, I'll do my predictions again. And Silva versus Blader kicks off the card. I'm picking Teresa Blader here. She's an underdog. And if Teresa Blader wins this fight in a way that I think that she's going to win the fight, you're not going to get Blader as an underdog again for a very long time. This girl's like minus 600, minus 700 favorite over Naoya Maya on Dana White's Contender Series, and she actually won the fight and didn't get signed to the UFC because the fight wasn't that exciting, it wasn't that impressive. But I feel like maybe they were trying to find a fight for Natalia Silva, and a lot of people turned her down, so they just signed Blader to fight Silva, you know what I mean? And I feel like maybe that's kind of what's happened here. But Teresa Blader, she's good. When she was 18 years old, she beat Lucy Pudilova in an exhibition MMA fight when she was an amateur, and that was Lucy Pudilova's first fight since leaving the UFC. So and now Lucy Pudilova's re-signed to the UFC. Blader is 20 years old now. She still holds a win over Pudilova. She's a great wrestler. I think she's going to ground out Natalia Silva and win the fight that way. I know how good Natalia Silva is. I know how good she looked against Jasmine Jasudavicius. I watched that fight somewhat recently when I saw this fight being made, and everyone was like, oh my god, Natalia Silva's so good. And I was like, I remember Natalia Silva, but I don't remember why everyone's picking her. And then I watched it, and she made Jasmine look like she didn't know what she's doing, but I really feel like Teresa Blader is that prospect. She's not even 21 years old yet. She's really good. She's pretty big for 125 as well. She's got a very big reach as well, 71-inch reach, but I don't think that's going to matter. I think she's going to be looking to use the wrestling and win a decision. So give me Teresa Blader here. Undefeated as a pro, undefeated as an amateur. Fernie Garcia taking on Brady Hiestand. I'm picking Fernie Garcia mainly because I'm really worried about the competition that Brady Hiestand has fought in his career. In his professional MMA career, not including the Ultimate Fighter fights, this guy has never beaten anyone with a win on the record. 0-2 opponent, debuting opponent, 0-4 opponent, 0-6 opponent, 0-12 opponent. A little bit sketchy, and the win over Vince Murdoch as well hasn't aged very good as well, because Vince Murdoch recently lost to a guy that is 2-7. Yeah, scary, isn't it? Why is my mouse doing this? My mouse always does this. It's the most frustrating thing, and it always tests me. What is wrong with my mouse, guys? No, I can't use a trackpad in YouTube. I've got to move my mouse quick. I'm picking Fernie Garcia here. He got a KO over Joshua Weems, who actually recently signed to the UFC, so good for Joshua Weems. And that was his first KO in a long time. I'm picking Fernie Garcia to win a decision, using his wrestling and his boxing, which he does have. Maria Silva taking on Vanessa Demopolis. My mouse isn't working at all. It's very frustrating. I'm picking Vanessa Demopolis here. Maria Silva, same sort of situation. This girl has not fought good competition whatsoever. She lost to a girl that was 9-0 in Marina Rodriguez, and then she fought 0-1 and debuting, and then she took on Tabitha Ricci, lost that fight. Recently beat Gloria Betapola by close decision on the feet. She looked really good in that fight, I know. But Vanessa Demopolis, I think she's got the grappling and wrestling advantage. I'm going to trust her to use that. Decision or submission for Demopolis. As women's MMA, you guys know how bad I am at picking women's MMA, but I'm still going to pick two underdogs so far in women's MMA, which is scary, I know. Ricky Torcios taking on Kevin Natividad. After watching Ricky Torcios take on Ayman Sahabi, I told myself I'm never going to pick Ricky Torcios again. But I'm going to pick him to beat Kevin Natividad. Kevin Natividad hasn't fought for about a year and a half, and even then he's coming off 2 KO losses, and he hasn't got a win in UFC yet. I'm going to pick Ricky Turcios to win. I'm not that confident in it, but I feel like he should be able to beat Kevin Natividad, who was coming off a pretty long layoff. And Turcios, I picked Ricky Turcios to win the Ultimate Fighter before the show even started. Like, I was high on Turcios. This guy's fought good competition on the regional scene. His one loss come to Mana Martinez, who's now in the UFC himself and is doing somewhat good things. Turcios' decision is the pick. Not that confident though, because I don't know if I can trust Ricky Turcios after his last fight. Miles Johns taking on Vince Morales in this one here. I'm going to be picking Miles Johns, but do be not warned, but just do be aware that this is a short notice fight for Miles Johns. The original opponent was going to be Jose Johnson versus Vince Morales, and it was going to be Jose Johnson's debut. I was going to pick Jose Johnson to win that fight, and I'm going to pick Miles Johns to win this one here. And I think he's just going to be able to beat Vince Morales. I'm not too sure how short notice this fight is. I want to say maybe it's like 3 weeks short notice or so like that, but I'm going to be picking him to win. I'm going to be picking him to beat Vince Morales, who is a wrestler that's fallen in love with his hands, and I'm going to pick him to win by a decision. Jennifer Maia versus Marina Moroz is a pretty good fight. This is a big step down in competition for Jennifer Maia and a big step up in competition for Marina Moroz. So for that reason, I'm going with Jennifer Maia. I don't know if I can trust her again, but she's on a 2-fight losing streak to Manon Fiorot and to Caitlin Chookagian, who are 2 very high-level fighters in the top 5 of the division. Marina Moroz, I don't even think she's in the rankings right now. And she recently beat Maria Agapova, who we know has got no ground game whatsoever. So, I'm going to be picking Maia here. She is the underdog. She's fought the much higher level competition, which is why I'm going to pick her in this fight here. Zhalgashu Magulov taking on Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson's the pick. Charles Johnson versus KO is the pick. He lost to Jeff Molina in a very close fight, which is interesting. And then he got KO by Manel Kape. I'm going to be picking Charles Johnson to KO. And then Charles Johnson's that good, man. He, Tiger Muay Thai, he won a tournament to get into Tiger Muay Thai all those years ago. And he does have a pretty good wrestling base himself. I know he lost to Muhammad Makayev, but I think they should still be able to beat Zhalgashu Magulov. So I'm going to pick him by KO or decision, but I'm still leaning the KO side, which is sketchy at 125. Jack Della Maddalena taking on Danny Roberts. I think Jack Della Maddalena should get a KO in the first round here. He's got 2 wins in the UFC so far, and both of those wins are by KO. In the first round, he knocked out Pete Rodriguez in the first round. He knocked out Ramazan Emeev in the first round. And Danny Roberts' chin is pretty sketchy. Like, Francisco Trinaldo was hitting him with jabs and just little strikes, and he was kind of wobbling around the place. And I feel like Jack Della Maddalena hits a lot harder than 43-year-old Francisco Trinaldo at this point. And I think that he's going to be able to box up Roberts and get the KO. And then we're going to see him fight at UFC 284 in Perth. Maddalena by KO is the pick. He is a pretty big favourite in this matchup, but I think reasonably so. He really should get the fight done here. Cody Brundage taking on Rodolfo Vieira. This is a very interesting fight because Brundage has very good power, very good takedown defense, very good wrestling. Vieira, he went like 0 for 20 or so on takedowns against Chris Curtis, and this is a big step down in competition and a big step up in competition for Cody Brundage here. I think Vieira is going to get the fight to the ground at some point. I think he's going to get a submission over Brundage early on, and that's the pick, but I'm a little bit sketchy about it. I think it could go either way. If the fight can stay on the feet, Brundage does have power, and he did beat Trayshawn Gore on the feet. He beat Trayshawn Gore by KO on the feet. So, you never know what can happen there. Muslim Salikov versus Andre Fialho. Going with Andre Fialho as the underdog. I know it's a weird pick, and I know it's not going to be a popular pick at all. But Muslim Salikov is almost 39 years old. Li Jingliang did knock him down a couple of times a few months ago. And Andre Fialho, this guy fights so often, man. I mean, he lost to Jake Matthews, I know, but Jake Matthews looked amazing in that fight. He knocked out Cameron Van Camp, which in hindsight isn't that great, but it is what it is. He knocked out Miguel Baeza, and he lost to Michel Pereira, which in a fight he took on short notice. All Andre Fialho has is boxing. That's literally all he's got. The Muslim Salikov's a striker. He is a Kung Fu striker, the king of Kung Fu. I mean, he does have really nice kicks, but I think Andre Fialho is going to be a little bit more aggressive. I think he's going to find the chin of an almost 39-year-old Muslim Salikov, so give me him by KO. Chase Sherman versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. I considered Chase Sherman pick. Short notice fight for both guys, really. Chase Sherman was meant to fight Josh Parisian a couple of weeks ago. That fight fell out. Waldo Cortez Acosta has stepped in on short notice after beating Jared Vanderaa a week and 2 days ago at the time of recording. So a 2-week turnaround for Cortez Acosta. I love it when people turn around quickly. But the scary thing about Cortez Acosta is he was getting his legs kicked a lot by Jared Vanderaa. And Chase Sherman does have some very nasty leg kicks. But Chase Sherman, he's a boxer. That's kind of all he really does. And Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's also really only a boxer. And I feel like Chase Sherman's more likely to get in a brawl with Cortez Acosta, and we saw what happened when you get in a brawl with Waldo Cortez Acosta. You get KO. Danilo Souza decided to brawl with Cortez, and Waldo knocked him out in the first round. He knocked out Thomas Peterson as well, somewhat late into the fight, and Thomas Peterson's a very good prospect. You will see this man in the UFC at some point, maybe next year or the year after, very good prospect. But for now, I'm going to be picking Waldo Cortez Acosta, and I am picking him by KO, but I am a little bit sketchy because I know that Sherman is an underrated fighter. Maybe he can get it done with the leg kicks and uses boxing himself, but I'm going to be picking him to win. Ion Cutelaba is taking on Kenichi Nzechukwu. I'm picking Ion Cutelaba here. I keep picking Ion Cutelaba and he keeps losing. And if he loses this one, it might be a situation where I just got to stop picking him then. I think I picked Ion Cutelaba to beat Johnny Walker, which in hindsight was a pretty bad pick. I think I picked him to beat Ryan Spann as well, but that was a few months ago now. I know I picked him to beat Devin Clark. Ion Cutelaba is just one of those fighters, man, which maybe I don't have the best read on, but same with Kenichi Nzechukwu. This guy beat Carlos Olberg in his debut, and then he beat Danilo Marquez, who's actually a pretty nice grappler himself. Lost to Darwin Jung by weird TKO. Lost a decision to Nikolai in a fight that he won, in my opinion. I know he got a point deducted, but he still won. Carl Roberson as well. He looked amazing in that fight, but that's Carl Roberson. I feel like maybe this is a step up in competition from Roberson. I'm picking Cutelaba. This guy always has a crazy first round. I think Cutelaba gets a KO in the first, or Nzechukwu takes over and wins the fight after that. Cutelaba by KO in the first round or bust is my pick. So if the fight goes into the second and third round, my confidence in Cutelaba was going to go downhill a lot. Now, Lewis versus Spivak. This is a weird fight here. I'm picking Spivak, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if Lewis gets the KO. If Lewis is going to KO anyone highly ranked in the heavyweight division, it probably would be Sergey Spivak, because realistically, we all know that Spivak doesn't have the best striking in the world, and he is getting hit at times, but he's looking really good on the ground, and he's using, he's just using his wrestling. Like, it's good to see. A lot of wrestlers don't wrestle, and it is hard to pick guys like that, but Spivak is a guy that uses wrestling, and a lot of his wins come by ground and pound TKO. I'm picking Spivak to get this one done. Lewis could knock him out though. I mean, he knocked out Chris Curtis, who in my opinion is a much better fighter than Spivak, and he knocked out Chris Dalkaus as well. Chris Dalkaus, I guess we kind of learned, isn't as good as we thought he would be. He got knocked out by Taito Ivasa and Sergey Pavlovich twice in about 9 months. A little bit scary, but I'm still going to side with Derek Lewis to get this one done. Sorry. I'm still going to pick Sergey Spivak to get this one done by ground and pound TKO, maybe in like the third round. I think he's going to grind out the first 2 rounds, use the clinch, use the wrestling and win the first 2 rounds, and then get a TKO over a tired Derek Lewis in the third round. So give me Spivak by ground and pound TKO. But if Lewis can keep the fight on the feet, it's going to be very dangerous for Spivak, and I would not be too surprised if Lewis can get the KO in that matchup. So that's my quick picks. Only 13-minute video. Got it out quickly for you guys, so let me know what you think in the comments.